In this video, I would like to share my experience of what I call consciousness, namely the awareness of the presence of being, of something, of reality, and the various states of consciousness that what I call I have experienced throughout what I call my life. And Hegel says that consciousness is the relationship between the I, the self, and the object. And the Phenomenology of Spirit, the book, is titled the Science of the Experience of Consciousness. So I have listed 10 points. You can see the structure down below. Of modes of consciousness that what I call I have adopted throughout my experience of being, I guess. So the first moment of what I could call consciousness are my first memories as an empirical individual, and they date from 1995. These are my first memories, the first memories that I have of the presence of the world or something, I guess. And as an individual, my relationship to the world as a thinking entity begins in 1995, because prior to that I have no memory, I have no consciousness. So that's the first moment. Then, second, with no specific time, no specific date. It has been developing throughout my conscious experience of the world. I am aware of what we call a world, and I know the official story of the world, which is there was a Big Bang some 13 billion years ago, and then some 4 billion years ago, chemical structures started to self-reproduce, and this is what we call life, and life has followed a course of Darwinian evolution for the past 4 billion years or so. And some 5,000 years ago approximately, a process named history started to develop, that men, who are biological creatures, started to write their own relationship to the world and their own chronological development and reflect upon their own history, their own institutions, their own way of being, and this is what we call history. So if I had to simplify what I have learned about being, I have this view that I have learned as a student of myself and as a student in the educational system and as an experience of the world, that the official story of being is that there's this physical, biological, and historical process of development, and this is what we call the world. So yeah. Then a third moment. At the beginning of August 2016, there had been a terrorist attack in France. A priest had been killed at the end of July by a young Muslim terrorist, and he was murdered in his church. And this event caused me terror and shock and a feeling of radical separation from the world, a radical alienation, because the worldview that I held back then, if I had to simplify, I was some sort of an ecological communist. I was influenced by Zizek. I was a radical leftist, but not a liberal leftist. I was a mixture of an old-fashioned communist with ecological worldviews. So it was not really structured. I was 24 years old. I had no formal education, so it was confused, but I defined myself as some sort of a proto-communist. But this event, the worldview that I had, could not explain how it happened, because at this moment I tried to explain or to justify the terrorist attacks by saying that these were young men who were deprived of economic opportunities. It was capitalism which created inequalities, and they were excluded, and so they were deluded, and they chose religious fanaticism instead of socio-economic revolt. So they were deluded by capitalism, whatever. These were the kind of explanations that I had because of my readings, and yeah. But with this event, I experienced a radical alienation. My worldview could not explain how such an act could be possible, and it faced me. It forced me to search for answers, to search for understanding, to find an answer of how this could happen. And this is what had started what I call my intellectual journey, what people call the red pill process. And I started to read first conservative authors, and I found that the view of the conservatives enabled me to understand much better how such events could be possible than my then leftist worldview. And this is how I became right-wing during a phase of my development. And yeah. Then the fourth moment of consciousness, August 2017. So I had been on this red pill process for a year now, and I had my first spiritual experience. And if I had to define what happened, I would say that I was watching a video by a young right-wing pagan, Forgotten Roots, and I had the feeling, the impression that my mind was externalized in his mind, that I had found my mind in his mind, and that he was talking directly to me, or that my mind was talking to me through the mediation of himself. It was very strange, but all of a sudden I started to believe in what people call spirits or spiritual experiences, and I ceased to become an atheist. I did not talk about God, but I talked about spiritual realities, spiritual entities. And this experience did not occur randomly. It had been the result of a full year of studying, thinking, reflecting, watching videos, confronting ideas, accumulating knowledge. So it did not happen randomly. That's what I think differentiates me from many people who talk about spiritual experiences, that all my experiences occurred as a result of a cognitive process. So yeah. Then a first step in the development of my consciousness is that during August 2017 and broadly August 2018, I have experienced countless synchronicities. And each time it was as a result of a process of understanding and gathering knowledge and making connections and connecting the dots and seeing the patterns. And the synchronicities, for instance, they manifested themselves in the fact that I bought lots of books, and when I had spent many days thinking about an idea or a representation, I opened the book randomly and I stumbled upon the proper passage. So it's like if I could guess and anticipate the contents of the books before reading the books. Or I stumbled upon comments on the internet which manifested the content of my mind after several days of reflection and thinking. So during a full year, I experienced dozens of small hints of synchronicities, the idea that my mind and the world were somehow connected. Then, sixth point, about the same time, towards the end of 2017, the early month of 2018, I had spiritual experiences with right-wing pagans, the Thulian perspective and Marie Cachet, and it was very intense in the sense that I had the feeling that their mind and my mind were connected. So yeah. Then, seventh moment, it was January 2018. This is maybe the most strange experience that I ever had, I guess. I had the consciousness of the dissolution of reality. It lasted for maybe 5 seconds or 3 seconds, I don't know, but for a glimpse of time, it was beyond time, but for maybe 3 or 5 seconds, I had the feeling that reality was dissolving, that the separation between my consciousness and the world was being abolished, and that I experienced what I could call absolute reality, for lack of a better word. So this happened. It lasted, like I said, 5 seconds maximum, but I remember more than 4 years later that it was such a different kind of state of reality or mode of consciousness that this still leaves me full of questions and yeah. Then, eighth moment, it was probably February 2018. It was then again a spiritual experience, for lack of a better word. I was watching a video by a young girl named Stella who made right-wing contents, and she was talking about Andrew Jackson, and I made videos on this channel explaining what happened. But then again, I had the feeling, the impression, the sensation, I don't know, that she was talking directly to me, although she wasn't, but it's like as if my mind was speaking to myself through her. And this was one of the most intense spiritual experiences I ever had, because it left me in a state of a transcendent mode of consciousness. And then again, it did not happen randomly, in the sense that it is because she developed a certain kind of ideas and that I was on a similar mindset, for lack of a better word, that I recognized myself in her without understanding what was happening to me. So yeah. Then, ninth mode of consciousness that I experienced, it is the experience that I keep referring to in a lot of my videos. It is what happened to me in August 2018, what I called my God experience, and I called also the Fichte moment, as a reference to the German philosopher Fichte. And what I later learned was what Hegel calls reason, namely, I experienced myself as a singular consciousness, as being the whole of reality. And I said to myself that whatever or whoever calls reality exists only through the mediation of my consciousness. I go back to the second point, the story of the world, the Big Bang, life and Darwinian evolution and history. I said to myself, all these modes of knowledge, what we call being, exists because I exist. I was not there 13 billion years ago, but the idea that there was a Big Bang and Darwinian evolution and 5,000 years of history exist, whatever the meaning of the word exists, because of my consciousness. And this experience of reason, what I call my God experience, it was not supernatural like some other spiritual experiences. It was more of a calm, although it was traumatic, but it was a calm, rational understanding that what I call my consciousness was the condition of the possibility of the existence of anything whatsoever. This is what I thought about, that I am the cause of the existence of anything at all. I became an idealist, a subjective idealist. Yeah. And finally, the 10th kind of mode of consciousness that I experienced, it's during the past few weeks, now that I have been working again towards producing intellectual content and that I have awakened myself intellectually again. I have had very brief experiences, maybe a couple of times when I was sleeping. I felt, I might say, possessed, like a feeling of a spiritual presence taking over, but it's like being dissolved away. I don't know how to express it. It's like being like a taken by a washing machine, a spiritual washing machine, a feeling of having a spiritual being within me. I don't know, it lasted, then again, maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and it was during my sleep, so it's very vague. But if I had to explain with rational terms, I would say that I've had the feeling for just a couple of times that there was a spirit, an immaterial being within me. And that's what I could say. So this is what I could say about the experience of what I call consciousness, the different modes of consciousness that I have experienced in broad outline throughout my conscious life. And yeah, that's what I wanted to share. And I am planning to offer a comment of Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, because I understand more and more about the book. And yeah, that's what I had to share.